Well, it's time to put on my Calgary Stampeders gear as we'll talk about Calgary Stampeders from the past and the CFL, as recently the CFL, the Canadian Football League, revealed their class who is going to be inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame for the 2021 class. And just like last year, you can see that video right here where it talked about the 2020 class. The Calgary Stampeders are actually very, very well represented for the 2021 class. And I'll touch on the other players and builders that are inducted as well, as we'll talk about the class as a whole. But two players and a builder who have strong ties with the Calgary Stampeders are going to be inducted, have their head forever enshrined in the Hall of Fame in Hamilton, Ontario. And it's going to definitely be a big Calgary Stampeders reunion. Because if you recall, fortunately, we did not have a season last season. So there was no official induction or Hall of Fame game. So it'll be one big Calgary Stampeders reunion party. So let's bring up, I'll put the story in the description below on all the people. And congratulations to everyone that got inducted into the Hall of Fame for the 2021 class. But one player definitely was a slam dunk, the first ballot, and was in the first ballot. Another took a while, and it's just the recognition that's finally out there. So as mentioned in the story, 5 legendary players from the Canadian Football League, CFL, and an iconic head coach. As this head coach I will talk about, actually coached on both sides of the border, but he had some time right here in Canada, who are included in the 2021 class unveiled today by the Canadian Football Hall of Fame and Museum. So who's going to be inducted into the Canadian Football League Hall of Fame for the 2021 class? Well, defenseman lineman Will Johnson. Yes, the sackmaster from the early to mid 1990s, who has the 99 sacks with the Calgary Stampeders. And actually, Will Johnson, as I know, still lives in Calgary today as a police officer. So Will Johnson is going to be finally inducted into the CFL Hall of Fame. And then you got Mike Walker, another defensive lineman. I know he played for most of his career. I know he spent some time with the Edmonton Eskimos. And then wide receiver Nik Lewis. That's definitely the slam dunk Hall of Fame first ballot that got inducted. The all-time receptions leader. Spent a lot of time here in Calgary, 11 seasons, and winning 2 Grey Cups. So that was expected. I mean, last year the other slam dunk Hall of Famer was Henry Burris, and actually 2 years ago, John Cornish. So definitely had some slam dunk Hall of Fame first ballots that have been inducted recently who played the Calgary Stampeders. Other players is defensive backs, Orlondo Steinauer, as I meant to say, who is now the head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, but I definitely remember Orlondo Steinauer playing actually for both Hamilton and Toronto, so he was definitely a part of the Battle of Ontario rivalry. And then Don Wilson, I believe he also spent some time with the Edmonton Eskimos in the 1980s. So those are the 5 players. You got Will Johnson, Mike Walker, Nik Lewis, Orlondo Steinauer, and Don Wilson. So those are the players going into the Hall of Fame. So congratulations to the players. And in the builders, well, former Montreal Alouettes head coach Marv Levy. That's the legendary head coach that got inducted into the Hall of Fame. I know Marv Levy coached the Montreal Alouettes in the late 1970s, I understand. I know that I know him more his time coaching in various ranks on the American side of the border, but those Montreal Alouettes that he coached predated me. And then the 6th commissioner of the CFL also was a part of the ownership group when we bought the team, when the local ownership group bought the team in 2005 to get away from the F-Troop days, is Doug Mitchell. So the 3 Calgary Stampeders that are inducted into the Canadian Football League Hall of Fame for the 2021 class be highlighted with Nik Lewis, Will Johnson for the players, and Doug Mitchell. So let's just touch upon each of the players that, or everybody that's being inducted into the CFL Hall of Fame. So let's start off with Will Johnson, the player, and he definitely was a sack master, as they say He actually is tied with Charleston Hughes in the Calgary Stampeders franchise leader for sacks with 99. And he kind of humbled me because I remember in 2017 they had a reunion, 25th anniversary reunion of the 1992 Grey Cup team, and I kind of asked Will Johnson about what he thought Charleston Hughes would potentially take, passing the record, and actually it wound up being Charleston Hughes tied it before he got traded to Hamilton and signed with Saskatchewan, or got traded to Hamilton and Saskatchewan, and he kind of humbled me and put me in my place, to be honest. He says he did it in fewer seasons, but I definitely remember Will Johnson being a big sack master, and of course, if you watch it, congratulations and thanks for what you do for the Calgary community with the CPS, the Calgary Police Service, and definitely I would say being a sack master on the field, playing football, definitely prepares you to be, anyone to be a first responder. And that seems to be that popular career for a lot of former football players as they do some kind of work with first responders, whether police or fire or ambulance. But Will Johnson, he played 132 games during his 9 seasons in the CFL. I most associate Will Johnson with the Calgary Stampeders as he played 8 of them from Calgary from 1989 to 1996, including being on that said 1992 Grey Cup winning team, the first one that I was around for. He also spent 1 season with the Saskatchewan Roughers. He kind of had a similar path to Charleston Hughes, where he was a sack master, spent a lot of time with the Calgary Stampeders, and then go to Saskatchewan, where he was with them for that 1 season in 1997, where Saskatchewan actually had a Cinderella run to the Grey Cup. And he said appeared in 3 games, won it in 1992. He was on the wrong end of it in 1995 with Calgary and 1997 with Saskatchewan. And then mentions that he was a West Division All-Star 6 times and a CFL All-Star on 5 occasions. So he definitely, as it says, a model of consistency. Is I remember during the heyday, in the early to mid 1990s, we also had a Laundry Johnson, so we had a couple Johnsons to fear if you're an offensive player facing the Calgary Stamps defense. But Will Johnson, definitely, I remember him being the sack master for Calgary. As I mentioned, he's credited with 99 sacks, good for 13th on the all-time list. The CFL sack leader from 1991 and 1994, both with Calgary. He recorded 9 or more sacks in 8 of his 9 seasons. The Montreal, Louisiana native was in the West Division most outstanding defensive player back in 1991. In his early days, we had 15 sacks that season. And it also highlights that he had 288 tackles, 8 fumble recoveries, and 1 interception. So, pretty good career, I would say, for Will Johnson. I would say it's about time that he got inducted into the CFL Hall of Fame. He's been on the Wall of Fame at McMahon Stadium, where his name is forever enshrined on the McMahon Stadium wall. But he definitely, I would say, I was almost thinking, when was Will Johnson going to finally get into the CFL Hall of Fame? Well, congratulations. So next person let's talk about Marv Levy, as I'm just going in the order that they list on the website, being the coach. Most synonymously when it comes to the Canadian Football League, he was associated with the Montreal Alouettes. As it says, Levy was named the head coach of the Montreal Alouettes in 1973, so this was predated me, and now Montreal won the Grey Cup in 1977 at home. And he had following stints as he coached in the National Football League and the NCAA. The Alouettes cleared in the playoffs in all 5 seasons that he was here in Canada, including capturing the Cheers Prize Grey Cup in 1974 and 1977. In 1974, he won the Annis Dukas Trophy for CFL's Coach of the Year. The Alouettes compiled a record of 43-31-4 for a .577 winning percentage during his tenure. I know in the 1970s, the Ottawa Rough Riders and the Montreal Alouettes had their heyday out in the East. This predates me, but as I mentioned here, is that with this announcement, Levy is about to be only the 3rd person enshrined in both Canada and in Canton. So he is in the CFL Hall of Fame in Hamilton, Ontario, and he's also in the Pro Hall Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. So he's now been recognized on both sides of the board when it comes to football. The latter was recognized for Levy leading NFL's Buffalo Bills. Oh yeah, to 4 consecutive Super Bowl championships, and let's just leave it at that. Or games, appearances. Unfortunately, they were on the wrong end of all four of them, but that's how I also know Marv Levy, or associate him more with his time that he did with the American football, because the Montreal Alouettes time was predated me. But I watched the interview, and I think in this video or in this article I put in the description, they talked to like all the players and builders that were inducted. That they said Marv Levy, he coached football somewhere for 47 years. He was only in Canada for 5 years, and he still cherishes some of that. So yeah, so I mean, he was recognized for his work with the Buffalo Bills in the NFL and the Montreal Alouettes in the CFL. And then he also had tenders with the Kansas City Chiefs. Levi also joins Bud Grant, and I've seen the statue of Bud Grant when I was in Winnipeg. And Warren Moon, the quarterback that was very, very successful in the Edmonton Eskimos as quarterback. And then I know he most honestly played for the Houston Oilers, who are now that franchise is the Tennessee Titans. But he made some history. Marv Levy being only the third player, or person I should say, to be both in the Canadian Football League Hall of Fame and the Football Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. So congratulations to Marv Levy on your success, and I'm glad that you cherish some of the time that you coached up in Canada. I mean, too bad that you're associated with the infamous, 4 Super Bowls with the Buffalo Bills, but at least you got 2 Grey Cups up in Canada, so congratulations. Well, there's the next player that I definitely would associate with a lot more, not only because he's a Gemini's rule, and he's actually only 9 days older than me, is Nik Lewis. And the obvious thing with Nik Lewis on why he is his first ballot slam dunk Hall of Famer is the all-time receptions leader. He is the all-time receptions leader, and I remember when Nik Lewis came in to the CFL back in 2004, and that was still the dark times for the Calgary Stampeders, where that was the year that Matt Dunnigan was head coach, and Matt Dunnigan found Nik Lewis and came from Texas. And I remember, being a big, stocky receiver. I would say he's a little cocky, has some swagger, but all I remember with Nik Lewis is that he was always big to come up at the middle on second and long for catches. I remember he had one heck of a game in 2008 when Calgary was playing in Montreal, and then of course I watched him play live many seasons as a season ticket holder, and winning the Grey Cup in 2014 in Vancouver, and that ultimately was his last game as a Calgary Stampeder, because he did finish off his career with the Montreal Alouettes. But there's definitely a lot of things you can highlight about Nik Lewis, and he was a big stock receiver. And oh yeah, he also likes to do the hurdles. He do well in the hurdles in the Olympics, because he definitely likes to leap over defenders. And if I was a wide receiver, especially when the Calgary Stampeders, I would say when we had, Nik Lewis definitely led the way. Another player that I think could potentially be in the Hall of Fame one day is Jermaine Copeland. I just remember they were very entertaining, very talented, had their swagger. Same with Kenyon Rambo. There's it always goes on with Nik Lewis, but I definitely associate personality with him. I say Gemini's rule. If I was a red receiver, I would like to be that kind of receiver, just the guy that dances. I find it entertaining as long as it's not too far, but I say 2-time Grey Cup champion in 2008 and 2014. He played 14 seasons in the CFL. I most remember him as a Calgary Stampeder, starting in 2004 up to 2014, and then he played 3 seasons with the Montreal Alouettes from 2015 to 2017. He appeared in 226 games. As I mentioned, he began his career in Calgary, where he clipped 1,000 receiving yards in each of his first 9 seasons. And then he did that again in 2016 with Montreal. He recorded 6 seasons with 80 more receptions and 2 seasons with 100 more catches. Lewis is the CFL's all-time receptions leader in 2017 with a total of 1,051 receptions. I know he surpassed, G. Ray Simon. And it also mentions that 6-time All-Division All-Star, 3-time CFL All-Star in his career. He finished his career with 13,778 receiving yards, ranking in 5th in all-time and 71 touchdown receptions. Actually, the one crazy stat I believe with Nik Lewis, despite all these accolades, I think he actually did not receive a touchdown in the playoffs, as crazy as that sounds. But I would still say, the 2 Grey Cups, all the accolades, the leadership, and the swagger. I always also say with Nik Lewis, if Alan Pitts is the best receiver that the Calgary Stampeders ever had, Nik Lewis is just behind him at second. He's the second best receiver that I've watched play for the Calgary Stampeders, because we had Alan Pitts for 11 seasons as well. So congratulations, Nik Lewis. I expected when I made that video last year talking about the 2020 CFL Hall of Fame class and how well Calgary Stampeders are represented. I was thinking at that time, I said, well, Nik Lewis better be in next year, and he is in this year for 2021. So congratulations, Nik Lewis. I mean, he was just a very, very consistent receiver and always was counted on to make those big second and long catches, and that's how I remember, especially the 2008 Grey Cup, beyond the John Huffnagel speech, but he was a big part in Calgary, trucking away and eventually winning that Grey Cup in very hostile territory. And even then, I also remember, Nik Lewis, he had a very emotional speech with the Calgary Stampeders ahead of the 2014 Grey Cup, and he definitely put his body on the line where we won the Grey Cup that year. So that's all about Nik Lewis. I would say is the biggest name that I put on here that headlines the class. But let's continue on. Doug Mitchell, the other Calgary Stampeder that now on the builder side. Doug Mitchell's unbridled passion for football has made him the game stronger at the amateur and professional level. And I also believe he is a businessman. I think he's a lawyer, because he was also a part of the Calgary Stampeders ownership group in 2005 when we finally got the team back into local hands. I mean, it was just the F-Troop days with, Michael Federick and Fred Viteri, who, that was the person that I definitely was more angered with as a Calgary Stampeders then. I mean, I loved Sid Gucci when he had the team, but he had to sell it for financial reasons, and but it was nice when we finally got local ownership back in, where the Bills got paid, but it was not run well during 2002-04. But I remember Doug Mitchell. He was a part of that ownership group, led by Ted Hellard, and now the Calgary Flames own the Calgary Stampeders. But getting back to Doug Mitchell, he did play also in the CFL with the BC Lions, but that was just the start of his many accomplishments in football contribution sport. In particular, his dedication to football has been the defining features of his life, and a successful law career, and made him a remarkable family with his wife, Lois. So yeah, as I remember, he is a lawyer. And then it says, perhaps he's best known for running the league. And he definitely ran it during some dark times in the CFL from 1984 to 1988, which that was also one of the tough times for the Calgary Stampeders. During those days, Mitchell also served as the CFL Board's governors, with the Calgary Stampeders. His many contributions to the Canadian University football include the creation of Youth Sports Athlete of the Year, honoring Canadian student athletes, the honor formerly known as the Howard Mackey BLG and Lieutenant Governor Athletic Awards, is recently renamed the Honorable Lois Mitchell and Doug Mitchell U.S. Board's Athlete of the Year Awards, presented by the Mackey of Sports. Youth Sports is named one of the national semifinal games as the Mitchell Bowl in his honor, so that's some contributions right there for Doug Mitchell, and he's a member of the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame, the Canada Sports Hall of Fame, and Mitchell's contributions to the community has earned him the inclusion of the Alberta Order of Excellence and the Order of Canada. So that's definitely, he built the game a lot more in terms of off the field to make it stronger at the grassroots level, and his contributions made to the Canadian Football League and locally here in Calgary. So definitely thankful for Doug Mitchell's contributions to the CFL. So congratulations to Doug Mitchell. So let's run my way down the rest of the CFL class, because I've touched on the 3 Calgary Stampeders that highlight it for me in this video. But the next player is Orlondo Steinauer, who he definitely was one heck of a defensive back, and now he's carving his name early in his career when he was a coordinator, now as a coach. But he's a born leader, 2-time Grey Cup champion as a player. He actually won it for Hamilton in 1999 and 2004. So he definitely has a Battle of Ontario on his hand when it comes to Grey Cup championships as a player. But I remember associate Orlondo Steinhauer, I think, a little more with the Hamilton Tiger-Cats. And actually, I think he was also part of the coaching staff when the Toronto Argonauts won the Grey Cup in 2012. So it's definitely remember him many years, as he was a dominant defensive back, played much. He was a very smart and athletic player, as it mentions here. He actually played 13 seasons in the CFL, the Ottawa Rough Riders, in 1996, before that franchise ceased to exist. And then he was a Hamilton Tiger Cat from 1997 to 2000, which is the team that I most associate when I think of Orlondo Steinauer. And then he also has the Toronto Argonauts from 2001 to 2008. So I still think Hamilton a little more, but Toronto as well. I mean, he definitely was on both sides of the Battle of Ontario, but he's now the head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. He was a very great defensive coordinator, carving out his coaching career. And then he was named an All-Star on 3 different positions. So it tells you how versatile he is at cornerback, halfback, and safety, earning the East All-Star nods and 5 CFL All-Star nods in total. His career featured 49 interceptions, so you have to be aware when he was on the field if you were passing. Included 5 returns for touchdowns. His 1,178 interception return yards is second most of all time in CFL history, only behind Les Brown at 1,508. And he's, as mentioned, currently the head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I'd say he's doing very well so far as a head coach. So congratulations to Orlondo Steinauer. Thanks for everything you have done and continue to keep doing for the Canadian Football League. But yeah, I definitely remember him as a defensive, stalwart, mostly out east. But that's I'm going to say he definitely covered Ontario, because the Ottawa Rough Riders, Hamilton, and Toronto. So you can maybe nick him in Mr. Ontario as well, where he's had all of his success as a CFL player, now coach. I guess it'll be strange to see Orlondo Steinauer not associated with a team in Ontario, but that's another big name to highlight this year's CFL Hall of Fame class. Let's talk about Mike Walker. He is one of the best. He anchored one of the best defenses in CFL history. This was the earlier days of my life and before I followed the CFL, so I don't know Mike Walker as much as a player, but he enjoyed a 10-year CFL career, playing 135 games for Hamilton from 1982 to 1989, so he won a Grey Cup in 1986, and he also was in Edmonton from 1990 to 1991. As mentioned, capturing the Grey Cup with Hamilton in 1986, and in that same year he had 21 sacks. Wow. So he definitely was a sack master back in those days, and I know Hamilton in those days, especially when they won the Grey Cup in 1986, had a tough defense. Walker finished his career with a total of 95.5 sacks, 14th of all time, 149 tackles, 9 fumble recoveries, and 2 interceptions. And he was a defensive All-Star on 4 occasions and a CFL All-Star 3 times. So I'll see. Gotta give my congratulations to Mike Walker. I don't remember him playing because this happened in my much earlier days when he played, in my infancy, in my much earlier days where I wasn't into the CFL as much, and that was during the dark days for the Calgary Stampeders, and the Flames definitely overtook it during that time. But I didn't consider myself really following the CFL until about 1990, 1991. So it was towards the tail end of his career when Mike Walker played. But I'd say congratulations to Mike Walker. Thanks for your contributions in the 1980s and being a part of the Hamilton Tiger Cats history. And then the other player we'll talk about is Don Wilson, as he definitely was always on the right end when he was in the Grey Cup, as he played 12 seasons in the CFL as a defensive back with the Edmonton Eskimos from 1987 to 1989, and then he had another stint in 1993 to 1994 and in 1998. So I think I briefly remember him, but not as well. And then he also, in between, he spent some time with the Toronto Argonauts from 1990 to 1992. So yeah, there's a Grey Cup in there in 1991 with the Toronto Argonauts, a Grey Cup with the Edmonton Eskimos in 1993, and then he also was with Toronto in 1995 to 1996. So he had a Grey Cup with Toronto in 1996, and then he was a BC Lion for his second last season in 1997. So most notably, Don Wilson, he played with Edmonton, Toronto, and BC. Mentions the North Carolina product, played in 197 games in his career. Appeared in 4 Grey Cups, winning all 4 of them. 1987 with Edmonton, 1991 with Toronto, 1993 with Edmonton, and 1996 with Toronto. He was a defensive all-star 6 times and a CFL all-star 4 times. He finished his career with 67 interceptions, which puts him 5th of all time, 667 defensive tackles, which puts him 11th all time, and 1,046 reception return yards, 4th of all time, and 8 defensive touchdowns, tied for 3rd all time. So when he got the ball on the defensive side, he made the most of it. So I would say congratulations to Don Wilson on his success and being named into the Hall of Fame. So the other people that are named into the CFL Hall of Fame that aren't builders or players, well, there's a Bob Hooper media posthumous, so obviously he is long gone. But it mentions Hooper was an institution at the CHML radio in Hamilton, so I'm not familiar with that. So if you're watching this and you're from Hamilton, this name might sound familiar to you, where he began working as a broadcaster in 1961 before advancing to program director and vice president. In 1984, he became the station's play-by-play voice for the Hamilton Tiger-Cats, so this is definitely someone who is local to the Hamilton Tiger-Cats would know who this person is. After a 5-year break, Hooper returned play-by-play duties from 1997 to 2001, while also producing the station's Tiger-Cats oriented call-in shows. So yeah, if you're a Hamilton Tiger-Cat fan, I mean, obviously let me know. And what do you remember from Bob Hooper? And then from 2002 to 2004, Hooper was the Tiger-Cats director of media regulations. So he was definitely a big person in the Hamilton community. He later served as the member of the Hall of Fame selection committee and actually passed away in 2018. So unfortunately, he was not able to be around to get that honor. But so congratulations to Bob Hooper. And then the last person that we'll talk about is Bernie Pascal, another media person that's got inducted. This will be another person that you'll be more synonymous with if you're from that local area. And this time we're talking about Pascal, who joined Vancouver's BCTV in 1969 after working at radio stations and television stations in Flin Flon, CFAR. I guess he also spent some time in Alberta, Mesnat, CHAT. He spent some time in Winnipeg, CKRC, and then CJ. There's a CJ in Winnipeg, and then Toronto, CFTO. So he's been all over the country, but I guess he is most noted for, let's see what he goes, during his 30 years career with BC TV Sports Director. He was also more than the decade starting in 1969. Host and commentator and reporter for BC telecasts on CTV, including co-hosting when the network shared telecasts with CBC. Remember that? CTV is now TSN, which is all owned by Bell. But I definitely do remember CFL games being split up before TSN got all the rights in 2008. As I mentioned, he was a member of the CFRC since 1965, who helped select the CFL Shinley Award winners. Pascal received numerous honors for covering many sports. He is a member of several halls and a trustee on the BC Football Hall of Fame. So you'd say Bernie Pascal definitely would be more synonymous for in the Vancouver, BC area and the BC Lions. So congratulations, and that's all the people, players, builders that are a part of the 2021, as I meant to say, CFL Hall of Fame class. And as a Calgary Stampeders fan, we're definitely going to be very well represented, because you got Nik Lewis and Will Johnson for players, and then Doug Mitchell for this year. But I'm not sure if we're going to have a season, but I know that the Hall of Fame game actually is scheduled for, I think it's August 6th. Actually, it's Hamilton and Calgary that's playing. So fairly, Calgary is going to be a part of that, but it's still up on the air on what the heck are we going to do if we're going to have a season. And I'll touch upon that in another video that I'll record after this on that and the global draft. But last year's Hall of Fame class, we had Henry Burris, the quarterback, and then the current, general manager, head coach and president in John Huffnagel, and then Fred Childress, and then Greg Vavra, who was kind of more recognized for his time in collegiate football, but he spent some time in Calgary, both with the Dinos and the Calgary Stampeders. And then, of course, the 3 new players, people associated with the Calgary Stampeders, Nik Lewis, Will Johnson, Doug Mitchell. It's definitely going to be a big Calgary Stampeders reunion when everyone gets to show off their heads. They're forever enshrined in the CFL Hall of Fame. So I mean, congratulations to everyone that has been named to the 2021 CFL Hall of Fame. I share my thoughts and opinions and memories of all the players that I know, and definitely says a lot about the Calgary Stampeders, all the talent that we've had recently that has been inducted. I mean, a couple years ago, John Cornish got inducted into the CFL Hall of Fame, as that's another obvious choice. I'm just not too sure. I'm trying to think of any other potential Calgary Stampeders that might get inducted into the CFL Hall of Fame in the next couple of years. I mean, I know that I say that you can maybe make a case for Jermaine Copeland for his wide receiver. How about Travis Moore, or maybe even Vince Danielson on the Canadian side? These are just a couple players that I'm thinking of right now that might get their way in, that I can think of at the top of my head, that you might see them in a class either next season or down the road and say, oh yeah, I remember. I mean, I'd say for this year's class, I mean, Nik Lewis was a slam dunk first ballot, and he was in. And then last year was Henry Burris, and then John Huffnagel, I would say he definitely deserved the recognition. And then Fred Childress, one of the best offensive linemen that the Calgary Stampeders had. And then Greg Varver, well, I didn't know much about him because he obviously played in my infancy or before my time. But I mean, this year, Will Johnson, I'd say, yeah, it's definitely about time that he got inducted. And of course, Will Johnson, still thank him for what he does right now in Calgary with the CPS. So, and then Doug Mitchell, I mean, he's also been a big part of the Calgary community, but I also remember him being a part of the local ownership group when it was time to buy the team away from the F Troop, which the F Troop days definitely were very interesting to be a Calgary Stampeder fan, especially when you have an owner who had a lot of money, but his right-hand man definitely was a little nutty. I know I had a son that happened to play quarterback that was on the team, so that definitely made things interesting, but that's another story. Maybe I'll make another video and share silly memories from the F Troop days. So, what do you think of the CFL Hall of Fame class, and what do you think of everyone that has been inducted? So anyways, I say, you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans' journey, home the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders. Just make sure you like, subscribe. I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, and definitely gave that in this video. Talking about, Calgary Stampeders and the CFL, recapping games and stories, and hopefully, in 2021, there'll be games that'll actually recap, but that still remains to be seen at this point. But I also do a variety of non-sports content, let's say personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and also do share my experiences I'm on the road at a sport event. Hopefully, there'll be more Stampeder games, Grey Cups that I will be going to in the future. And I'm also trying to experiment and do some a little more on-the-go vlogging, or I just, want to experiment and branch out on my channel. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, you too, just to make sure to like, subscribe. I also have my other social media links down in the description below. So I still want to say congratulations to the 2021 CFL Hall of Fame class. Go Stamps go, and I'll see you in the next video.